As we approach the final stretch of the domestic season, our panel of betting experts is at the ready to find the value betting angles across Europe in the games that matter. We've got picks from the EFL playoffs, the Premier League top 5 race, and the teams hunting for the top spots in Italy. All that and more on today's show. Hello and welcome to the Football Betting Pod, powered by Betting Experts. I'm your host, Daniel Jenkins, joined as ever by Betting Experts football editor Sam Ingram. How are you doing, Sam?
Hello, Dan. All good. How are you?
I'm good. Do you feel like we need to change that? Because I feel like we're joined as ever by Scott and Daniele these days. Or are you still holding out hope that you might kick him off?
Well, I kind of like it, but we can switch it up if you want.
Okay, fine. Scott Thornton back again. How are you doing?
Very good. I'm hoping to carry this Champions League form I'm in into the Premier League, because last weekend we drew a blank in the Premier League, but I checked this morning. My last 8 pod bets in the Champions League have won, so I was feeling good about that. But now I need to carry it over into the domestic football because we only got 1 Champions League game left. I can't be winning 1 more bet until September.
Well, another man on good Champions League form. Daniele Pisacella, how are we doing? How are you feeling?
All right. I'm coping. Thank you.
Doing okay?
Yes, after that uneventful night. But I had a big dilemma in front of me. What if I lose every single bet from now on and then Inter wins the Champions League? Kind of sleepless nights, you know. I don't think the pod listeners will be very happy, but
you will be.
But I will be.
Maybe.
So they will be happy for me after all.
Yeah,
so.
I'm sure that's how it works.
I don't know.
How are you feeling after the game? I mean, we said on the pod we were hoping for another repeat of the first leg, and we basically got the same game again with an extra 30 minutes thrown in.
On steroids, I think.
Yeah.
The same game. No, it's great. I think, look, the team who wins celebrates, and those who lose try to explain why they lost. But let's not take anything away from Barcelona. That game was possible only because Barcelona has such attacking prowess and such, let's say, relaxed defending. Any other team 3-2 up at San Siro with 2 minutes to go makes a defensive change and park the bus. They left the fullbacks up and allowed Acerbi to score his first ever European goal with his right foot, which is weak foot, and the rest history. Going back to the Champions League final, because that's the past. PSG are favourites. Betsy believes PSG got over 60% chances of winning the Champions League. I would be very curious what Betsy thought about Manchester City chances before they played Inter at San Siro. But I do know that Manchester City were priced around 172, which probably was one of the shortest price for a Champions League final, probably going back to when Juventus lost to Borussia Dortmund in 1997. So the price is good. Either way you go, very difficult to call on the goal line. Over and under price exactly the same, and that happens with many finals. So just wait and see, because PSG are playing for nothing in the league, but they got a cup final. Inter are still in the title race, so I think maybe those prices could be affected by what happens between now and the 31st of May.
That winning goal as well, for Tazy climbing into the crowd, basically.
Yes. Not the first time he did it.
Marciniak didn't yellow card him for it. I was like, what has just happened?
Then he's a Madrid man then.
Yeah.
As they say in Spain.
But Felix Wyatt delivered last night, didn't he, to make up for it, because he doesn't mess about with the cards. But Marciniak...
Were you on cards then, Scott, I'm guessing?
I wasn't on cards because of Marciniak. I've sort of got a bit of a vendetta against him, and then when he just didn't, I didn't even have a bet on it. I was just like, well, how haven't you not booked him there? Because somebody's definitely got Frattesi gold card on for like a bet.
Yeah.
I was thinking...
Practically in the crowd, wasn't he?
Kept the shirts on. If you take
that's the main thing.
Book the Acerbi. The shirt.
That's the main thing. Climb a 10-foot barrier.
As long as you go your shirt.
That's fine.
Yeah, it's fine as long as you keep the kit on. It's probably the last chance we'll get to talk about the Champions League for a couple of weeks before we do what is probably going to be a bumper pod of just Daniele speaking in a couple of weeks' time. Sam, what did you think of the 2 ties? What do you think of the... First of all, was Inter Barcelona the best 2-legged tie you can remember?
I think so. Yeah, my memory's not great at the best of times, but in recent memory for me, it was just brilliant. Yeah, it had absolutely everything. Like Daniele said, Barcelona more than played their part, but I was just so impressed with Inter to keep coming back and coming up clutch really, like when it really mattered. What what was the equaliser? We'll be on about 90 odd minutes. And then to win it, that was brilliant. It was such a good game. Barca going forward are just breathtaking, really. So for Inter to deal with that, outscore them, I said earlier on in the first leg, like if this becomes a game where one team needs to outscore the other and there's going to be plenty of goals, then it definitely Barcelona are through to the final. And obviously it didn't work out that way. So fair play to Inter. Moving on to last night, it was a different kind of game. Obviously, we didn't have the 6 goals, but still really intriguing. I thought Arsenal were brilliant in the opening 15, 20 minutes, but PSG dealt with that well. Arsenal were always going to come knocking in the opening stages, and then PSG always looked threatening on the counter. They looked really, really good going forward when the ball was turned over. And I think once they got the second goal through Hakimi, then they settled for that, really. They shut up, brought defenders on. And if you're looking at the XG numbers, you'll look at that and think Arsenal really deserve something out of the game. But I would argue that when PSG shut up shop, after that, they were always going to invite pressure. And I think about 1.9 XG came after that second goal. So yeah, I could argue Arsenal may have deserved something from the game in terms of scoreline. But I would say that PSG riding out that opening stages, threatening on the counter throughout, I would say that the better team won, even if Mikel Arteta disagrees.
Scott, bring you in here. Would you agree better team won the Arsenal PSG tie?
Yeah, I think obviously we like to look at the underlying data, and it is important, and that's definitely what Arteta's hanging his hat on. But as Sam said, the ties, they felt over, didn't it, quite early? It felt over going into the second half, really. Arsenal did rally. I know the goal came, but they never really looked like going through last night. I suppose they did have a couple of good chances in the first 15 minutes. Martinelli, wasn't it? The ball came to him. Maybe Rice as well. But once that phase had gone and then PSG had scored, it did feel like the tie was over, which was foolish, really, when we see the way that the Inter and Barcelona game went. And but it just never really felt like Arsenal were going to go through last night, unfortunately, after that initial stint. With the Inter game, it's interesting. Like, it's viewed as a brilliant Inter comeback, and it is a brilliant Inter comeback. But Barcelona coming back from 2 goals down in both legs is incredible as well, isn't it? It's just one of those games that, back and forth.
Yeah. Barcelona, I was looking at the stats earlier. Barcelona finished the Champions League campaign, played 14 games, a total of 67 goals in those 14 games.
Wow.
Absolutely incredible. 4.78 on average per match. So sad to see the back of them. Hopefully they're just as entertaining next season and just as leaky at the back. But yeah, as I said, we'll do a full Champions League final preview a little bit closer to the time with one pretty comfortable looking Inter fan now, but we'll see how he's feeling in a couple of weeks' time. On with the tips for this weekend. Still plenty to play for up and down Europe's top leagues. Sam, let's start off with you looking at a game in League One playoff semi-finals.
The outlook of the playoffs in general across all 3 leagues are fascinating. I think there's probably more teams out of form than there are in form, which doesn't always happen. None of the championship teams are in their best moment. League 2 is very, very similar. League 1, maybe not so much, and that's where I'm focusing my first selection. It's the playoff race, League 1, where I'm finding it the hardest to really hang my hat on any of the 4 to actually clinch promotion. I could probably give you the 2 that are going to make the final, but I don't think I can give you much more than that, because that Charlton Stockport final I have in my mind, that could really go either way. But there is one team in the League 1 playoffs who are struggling. When you have a team not quite firing, when you've got question marks over key performers, injury concerns, etc. When you have a team like that meeting Charlton, so Wycombe beat Charlton. Charlton have harnessed any kind of momentum that has come their way in 2025. They are defensively sound, dogged, really good at home. They've won 10 out of 12 this calendar year at the Valley. When you've got 2 sides in different positions on and off the pitch, and when they meet over 180 minutes of football, usually, not always, but usually the team in a better rhythm and in better form end up creating enough chances to progress. And that's the exact script we've got when Charlton faces Wycombe for a shot at Wembley in the semi-final of the League One playoffs. Wycombe, at the minute, look a shadow of the team that had taken League One by the scruff of the neck during the first part of the season. They were level with Birmingham City on 50 points at the turn of the year. And it's worth mentioning, if you didn't know, Birmingham went on to break every record imaginable at this level in terms of points total. So that's how well Wycombe were doing in the first part of the season. So that was the level they were operating. And they looked brilliant. Richard Kone up top was in fantastic goal-scoring form. And then Matt Bloomfield, the Wycombe manager, left mid-January to go to Luton. And Wycombe's promotion push turned a bit sour. Luton and Bloomfield then fired over a number of big money offers for Richard Kone up front at Wycombe. They were all rebuffed, so fair play to Wycombe for that. And it's hard to say whether that turned Kone's head, but he only scored 2 goals from the end of the transfer window up until the final date of the season, and he had scored 16 previously. Obviously, injuries and collective Wycombe form didn't help, but still, that's something to definitely mention. Mike Dodds was the replacement at Wycombe. He arrived from Sunderland's backroom team. Wycombe were 5 points clear of Wrexham in third at the time. And his experience at Sunderland, Mike Dodds, in terms of being the main man in the dugout, was limited to a few interim spells when managers were sacked, and he won 4 out of 18 games in charge in that period. And it hasn't quite gone to plan at Wycombe for him. He's won 7 of 18 games. The Wycombe fan base not exactly sold on him. He's picked up a few results recently where maybe you thought Wycombe had turned a corner, but Wycombe's last 3 games, and this is quite interesting, they've all come against the League One playoffs trio. And I don't think I've ever seen that before. They played all three of the playoff contenders in the last 3 games. So it's obviously wise to look at that. Over the 3 games, 3 out of 3 defeats, 1 goal scored, 8 conceded, and one of those results were against Charlton. 4-0 at home. They lost 4-0 at home to Charlton, and the scoreline did not flatter Charlton at all. So obviously that is ringing round in my head of what I watched the game. That is at the forefront of my mind when approaching this semi-final. And we spoke about it on this podcast before. Most recently in the Champions League, actually, Company versus Inzaghi. It's a little bit different. But the managers in their respective dugouts obviously give certain selections a leg up. And here in Nathan Jones versus Mike Dodds just gives me a massive level of reassurance that Charlton will ultimately progress over 2 legs. If they can't get the first leg win in Wycombe, then I'll back them to get the job done in Charlton. And to finish it off, I mentioned about Wycombe keeping pace with Birmingham over the first half of the season. Over the second half of the season, from 24 games in 2025, Charlton's 52 points return makes them the best of the rest, just behind Birmingham City, if analysing this calendar year only. So Charlton to qualify, 1.8. I'm going to have 2 units on that.
2 units. So it's bold when you go above 1. So Betsy predictions for the tie, just in terms of reaching the final. Charlton getting a 56.6% chance of progressing past Wycombe, 30.9% chance of promotion with 33.5% chance for Stockport. So Betsy going along with you, thinking it's going to be a Charlton Stockport final when it takes place in just over a week's time. So Sam, my question is about, it's going to be focusing on Wycombe. So talked about their early season form, keeping pace, if not exceeding Birmingham for the first couple of months of the campaign, and they have sort of dropped off. And you mentioned they played the last 3 fixtures against playoff contenders, lost all 3. And I want to fall back on the old cliche that it's playoffs time, form goes out, it's out of the season. But I'm not going to go down that route. What I want to ask is there a chance that maybe they were sort of holding things back a little bit in those matches? They didn't really know who they were going to be playing. They knew they were going to be there, but maybe they were thinking these games don't matter. What really matters is a 2-legged playoff tie in a couple of weeks' time. Let's just keep things in reserve, keep some fuel in the tank, and then go again when the games actually matter. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, it's definitely a possibility, but higher up the playoff places you finish, obviously then you get home advantage. So is Mike Dodds and his Wycombe side that bothered about that? Maybe not, but I would argue if you've got 3 of the playoff teams coming up, really, you want to put in a good account of yourself. You want to be going into the playoffs in good form. And this selection is not only focusing on Wycombe's short-term recent form, it's just also focusing on the form since Mike Dodds took over. And there's good reason why the fan base isn't too pleased about the appointment. They've gone from Matt Bloomfield, who's doing a fantastic job, to now someone in Mike Dodds, who apparently he's a pretty good coach, but in terms of being the main man, just the experience isn't there. And at playoff level, when emotions are so high, when your tactics have got to be spot on a Wembley pitch, which is so big. Yeah, I'm just not having them at all, really. And considering their poor form, there's question marks over fitness of Richard Kone up top. He missed the final game this season. Apparently, he was being rested, but I'm not so sure. Yeah, questions surrounding Mike Dodds' appointment, lack of experience, and those 3 Wycombe fixtures. There's a lot of question marks there, and if you compare that to Charlton, alongside the brilliant performances we've seen from Charlton over the back end of the season, I think it has to make Charlton the better over 180 minutes. Like Wycombe, they might get a result at home, but just over 180 minutes, typically, like I said, the team in better form doesn't always win, but in this case, I think Charlton might just do it.
Yeah.
I've got a question for this game as well. So I usually like the playoff time of year because you can bet on throw-ins and goal kicks in the lower leagues. So I just checked the head-to-heads for Charlton and Wycombe this season. 57 and 56 throw-ins. The line is 51.5 at the moment. Why should... Did the style suit that here, Sam? Because I watched a great deal of either of the teams this year. Probably caught maybe a half of Charlton game. Did the style suit it?
Yeah, maybe in terms of throwing, it's not really my bag throwing. So yeah, I wouldn't take this as gospel, but I imagine so. Yeah, Charlton really quite resolute, dogged, as I said, defensively. Wycombe will try and be working the ball through that and getting the ball into the box. And yeah, I don't know. Charlton might not be having that. You might see a fair few clearances, a lot of headed clearances and clearing the lines. So potentially, but yeah, like I said, not really a throw-ins man, to be honest.
I've got a stat, Sam, that really aids your bet here. So looking at Wycombe in the domestic season, they lost just 1 match against the sides that finished 8th and below in the table, right? And they lost a total of 9 matches against the sides that finished 7th and above. So when they play the better teams, the record is pretty terrible. So I quite like that.
So that continues.
Yeah. Let's hope that continues, indeed, in Sam's first bet, which is Charlton to qualify against Wycombe in the League One playoffs. That's a 1.80 on Sky Bet, and he's gone for 2 units on that, which, if you're a frequent listener of the pod, you know, maybe worth backing. Over to you, Scott, for your first pick, looking at a game in the Premier League, Bournemouth versus Aston Villa.
Again, I've tried to pick the more interesting games. The Premier League, the relegation battle's over, the title race is over, but the race for Europe is very, very interesting. Bournemouth sort of rallied in recent weeks. They're unbeaten in their last 5 now, and they've drawn a few of those, don't get me wrong, but they're up to 8 in the Premier League, which will probably be enough to secure Europe. But then you've got Brentford, Brighton, Fulham hot in their tail, so they really need to get a result here. And likewise with Villa, where Champions League football is the aim for them. They're 7th, but only 3 points behind 5th and 4th even as well. So it should be an interesting game, and I've gone for overs shots and overs throw-ins as a result. So over 23.5 shots and 29.5 throws, and that's at 1.86. Bournemouth matches see the most throws in the Premier League with 39.8 on average, so very high. Villa, the least, 25.51. Something's got to give here. 21 in the reverse fixture at Villa Park, but these generally, the home advantage is a big thing here. The timing of the season, the importance of 3 points, and the head-to-head data at this ground is actually a bit more promising. So they were 40 the last time the teams played at this ground. An average of 41.33 in the Premier League meetings at this ground. I think there was 3 Premier League meetings overall. So yeah, far more promising there, and makes the over 29.5 look very, very doable. There's been 30 throws or more in all 8 of Bournemouth's home games in the league in 2025. Average of 41.13 there. So again, very, very high. And it's just down to Iraola's approach. We know how good of a manager he is, and he likes to press high. The team pick their moments to go forward, and they get forward very, very quickly. And it makes it intends for shots and throw-ins. So shots, again, it seems like a logical angle. It's something we've done quite a few times on the pod this season. And I'm happy to bank on it in the closing weeks, especially with the heightened importance. So Bournemouth match has also seen the most shots with just under 29 on average, well above the 23.5 I'm asking for. 28th in the reverse fixture at Villa Park. So, okay, the throw-ins let it down that day, but we've already established there should be more, seen as Bournemouth have home advantage this time around. And this bet did win when the teams met in this fixture last season with 26 shots. So, yeah, looks like a good bet to me.
Yeah, looking at the match itself, Scott, you mentioned home advantage. How much importance and significance are you putting on that? Because if you look at the relative home and away performance, Aston Villa have the biggest points per game difference of any team in the Premier League from their home matches to their away matches. So they've taken an average of 2.06 points from their home games, just 1.35 from their away games. That was starting to turn around recently. They picked up 3 wins on the spin against Brentford, Brighton and Southampton, but then lost against Manchester City in their previous Premier League away game. Are you expecting Villa to sort of regress back a little bit and we'll see the same sort of pretty dire away form that we were seeing for large spells of this season?
I think it'd be better if they played a little, quite well for this game, make it a competitive fixture with plenty of battles in the wide areas. It's more to do with the numbers suggest that people allow Villa to play their own game at home more than they would away. And okay, that's immaterial to the result. We just need Bournemouth to really give this a good go and get the ball forward quickly and press Villa. They can't play like the away team when it's such an important fixture at home. That's basically the thinking. So ideally, we'd have 2 teams playing very well, and Villa are just not allowed to passively pass the ball around and try and open up the spaces in behind to exploit like they do in their home games. And I think Bournemouth will be a little bit too savvy for that, particularly in front of their own fans.
Yeah, they've been quite streaky this season, Bournemouth, but had some good results lately. So maybe that's starting to turn a corner. Betsy projections for this game, 1.55 expected goals for Bournemouth, 1.47 expected for Aston Villa, 3.02 total, which is the 3rd highest in the Premier League for this weekend. So Betsy certainly agreeing with you. I think it's going to be a pretty open game, both teams on the score sheet and plenty of action in either box. So that certainly helps Scott's first bet, which is over 23.5 shots and over 29.5 throws. That's a 1.86 for Bournemouth versus Aston Villa in the Premier League this weekend. Daniele, over to you, and from the highs of Italian football and into in midweek to Serie A, top 4,
Yes,
top 5 race for this weekend.
To the lows of Serie A, you were about to say.
I didn't want to go.
The league that produced
that,
5 or 6 finalists in the last three years of European competition. See what Fiorentina does. Anyway, yeah, the Farmers League, like Luis Enrique said yesterday. No, I'm joking. It's a very interesting scrap for 4th place. I think the Scudetto title is done and dusted. We're going to touch this on Napoli in a moment. But for 4th place, it's very interesting because there are up to 5 teams that can achieve it. And obviously, Juventus drawing with Bologna last Sunday was the perfect result that set up the last 3 match days. And I'm going to go for another big game for Juve, travel to Lazio, which is a must-win game for the host if they want to finish 4th. But I'm going to go with Juve with an Asian handicap plus 0.25, which is 179. Therefore, if they draw, you only win half a stake. And betting this season on Juventus to draw probably was the winner because they drew 15 games in Serie A. And even with the new manager, Tudor, who replaced Motta, this tendency to draw games and to not put them away has remained. The big question is, are Juventus going to stumble over the line and finish 4th? I think they will, because for many different reasons. First of all, they got an easier running than anyone else. The projected points of their opponents is 1.37, which is the lowest between Roma, Lazio, Bologna, and I mean, we don't consider Fiorentina because they are too far away. So that's one factor. The second factor is this is obviously the most difficult game against a team, Lazio, that has drawn the last 5 home games. Again, I think Lazio have slowed down and they lack that cutting edge up front. And also against Napoli last weekend when they were playing against 10 men, they even struggled to get that 1-0 victory. And thirdly, because Betsy says so. And if Betsy says so with 3 games to go and they've been so accurate this season, I think you got good grounds to believe in it. Juventus are projected to finish with 68.5 points, Lazio 67.2 points. Then the maths is easily done. That means the Juventus are not going to lose this one, or at least get a draw, even if the next two are Udinese and Venezia and Lazio travels to Inter. I think that's really this game is what's gonna set Juve and Lazio apart. The projected goal is not high, but that's not a surprise considering Juventus number 2.26. But if you look at the expected goals and expected points, Juve are pretty much where they should be, 63.8 points, but very surprisingly much closer to the top of the expected point tables, Inter and Atalanta, than what they actually are. So I think there is an element of underachieving there. Therefore, I'm going to stay with Juve, not to get beaten. A return to Rome for Tudor, by the way, who was the manager of Lazio last season. The first game in charge for Lazio was Lazio 1, Juventus 0. I think he's going to get something back, at least get a point here.
Yeah, I just want to focus on Lazio for this one and their home form, Daniele. You touched upon it there, but it's quite a staggering difference for them. I mean, they won 6 of their first 7 at home and then had that 6-0 defeat to Inter in the middle of January. And since then, they've only won once.
Against Monza.
Against
bottom
Monza.
of the table, 5-1. The good news for Lazio is they always scored this season, apart that 6-0 defeat against Inter at the Olimpico, where they actually deserve to score in the first 25 minutes. But then, once Tati Castellanos got injured, and he's been injured, he's returned now, but he's been injured for a good part of 2 months and a half, the goals have dried up for Lazio. Zaccagni had a dip in form, and maybe the rotations, considering they were still involved in the UEFA Europa League, didn't quite work. I think this Lazio side has been overstretched. Is one of the most improved teams compared to last season. Last season, they were not able to finish in the top 4, and they still cultivate a little hope here. But as I said, I think against a Juventus side, I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't think Tudor has turned the water into wine since he came. He's still a Juventus side that struggles a lot to defend. They struggle to control the ball. In the second half, Bologna could have scored. But this is Juventus side that has got a little bit more fire in their belly. And I think basically they play for 2 results out of 3. Given that maybe Roma and Atalanta probably might share the points as well. Milan-Bologna looks a bit of a tricky game because it's 4 days before the Coppa Italia game gets played. So I think this is a pro-Juve fixture, really. I think they're going to come out at least non-defeated from the Olympics.
Yeah. With this bet, you've got the draw partly onside with the plus 0.25. Lazio drawn more matches at home than any other side in Serie A, and they're playing against the draw specialists in Juventus. Was there any temptation to just go straight down the middle?
You could, or you could go double chance and under 2.5 goals. I think that's probably the bet. But you never know. Juventus might have just a pride moment and try to snatch the win. I think probably this is the cautious approach, obviously.
Yeah, that makes sense. Daniele's first pick is Juventus plus 0.25 against Lazio. That's a 1.79 with a full unit on that. Sam, back over to you for your what's going to be your second and third picks of the show, looking at more matches from the EFL playoffs.
Yeah, down to League 2, Chesterfield versus Walsall. You've got Chesterfield to qualify at 1.95. They're the underdog in this market. Walsall are at 1.80. I'm going to side with Chesterfield at the bigger price. And similarly to the previous selection in League 1, those odds for me it's just not how I view the 2 teams in front of me right now. I think Chesterfield should be favourites to progress. Walsall's shift from league leaders earlier on in the season to the final day has been nothing short of remarkable, really, in a bad way. From the start of December, from a 3-2 win against Notts County, Walsall pieced together a 9-game winning run up until the end of January. And I remember thinking, wow, this is a serious team for the level. They were heavy favourites to win the league. Very impressive. Nathan Lowe was up top for Walsall. He was recalled by Stoke in January. He had scored 15 goals in 22 appearances for Walsall. He was probably the league's standout performer. And losing a forward like that in January, it's obviously going to stunt your trajectory in some way, whether that's in the short term or over the remainder of the season. And then in the next game, they put 4 past MK Dons. So people were probably thinking maybe life without Nathan Lowe wouldn't be so bad after all. Walsall were top of the league, 58 points from 25 games. They'd won 18 of the first 25 games and lost just 3. So they were absolutely flying. And after that victory against MK Dons on the 18th of January, Walsall played their remaining 21 fixtures and they won just 3 games. The 19 points from those 21 games was the 4th worst return in the division in that time frame. They'd have been just 3 points off relegation, I think, if this second half of the season form spanned the entirety of the League Two campaign. And Walsall actually beat Crewe on the final day. That was their first win in 15 games since mid-February. But because of their really impressive start to this season, they were poised to get the third and final automatic spot. And it looked like that win against Crewe on final day was going to win them promotion until Bradford City scored a really, really late winner at Valley Parade and consequently saw them leapfrog Walsall into the final automatic playoff spot in the dying seconds of the whole season. And the reason I bring that up is because as a player, as a fan, as the management staff, anyone involved in that club, what a gut punch that would have been. And it's surely not going to do any favours for morale in a Walsall dressing room where morale was lacking and on the floor anyway. Massively out of form results-wise, promotion snatched from them at the death, and now they've got to pick themselves up and go again versus Chesterfield here. And comparatively, Chesterfield, if you analyse the League Two table from, I think it was around the start of March, they played 15 games, 28 points returned. They were top of the tree in the whole division from the start of March, albeit they played 2 more games in Doncaster in the time frame I've got in front of me. So form-wise, it's chalk and cheese. Chesterfield might have snuck into 7th on the final day from 9th position before kickoff. They might be in the final playoff spot, but at the prices, in these circumstances that I've just laid out, for them to be the bigger price in the to qualify market, it just doesn't make sense to me. So Chesterfield to qualify at 1.95.
It is very unusual for just one team to kind of be in form as we head into the playoffs, Sam, isn't it? And do you read into anything about where teams finish in the spots themselves? I know you mentioned earlier, but generally, you get you get a better draw if you finish a bit higher. But those teams sort of coming in, finding form at the end of the season, finishing in 7th spot for League Two, 6th spot for the rest of the leagues. Do you think they have a little bit of added positivity, a bit of extra form, a little bit more about them? I know Crawley won the playoffs in League Two last season. They finished 7th in the table. Is that going to be an example for this team?
Maybe. It's a good question. At this level, I think the difference between 4th and 7th, I think typically I don't think there's too much disparity between those clubs in terms of playoff contenders finishing 4th and 7th. If you look at the Championship, for example, Bristol City hosts Sheffield United tonight. And in terms of points returned, Bristol City ended closer to the relegation places than they did to Sheffield United in 3rd, which is pretty remarkable. And the difference in quality between those two clubs, the difference in financial muscle, there is a big gap. But in League Two, it's not like that really. In League One, it's not really like that either. Maybe it's a bit of a step up from League Two. So yeah, with there not being too much disparity usually between 4th and 7th, and now Chesterfield are the one team out of the 4 in form, it makes their 4.50 price to win the playoffs. They're the underdogs. It makes that, it's just a standout price. That was 4-1 with Bet365 when it's opened. It's now 4.5 on Paddy and Betfair. And just going off the form book, like, it's not always going to win you playoffs, but I really don't mind getting it on side when, the one team out of the 4 is way out in the field in terms of pricing. I'm not going to go into all the playoff teams, but each of Walsall, Notts County and Wimbledon have won just once in their final 5 matches. Chesterfield, like I mentioned, from March, they're the best team in the league. I've got a couple bits of data in front of me. Since 1988, 25% of teams finishing in 7th place in League Two have gone on to win the League Two playoffs. So that's 9 of 34. Only 4th place trumps that with 14 out of 34 resulting in promotion. However, if you reduce that time frame a touch for the last 20 years since the EFL rebrand, the team that's finished in 7th in League Two is the team that has won the League Two playoffs most often. And that's happened 7 times. So yeah, to answer your question, Dan, finishing 7th is not going to cast you away from winning the playoffs. If anything, yeah, it might stand you in good stead, especially if you've just snuck in, and especially if you sneaking in is because of your form at the tail end of the season. Like you said, Crawley won it last season, so there is previous there too, and it's not going to be plain sailing for Chesterfield. Definitely not. Notts County, Wimbledon, two good teams, whoever they meet at Wembley, if they get to Wembley. But the way the playoffs are looking, it's just a massive opportunity for the football club, because if they get into the playoffs again next year, things might not look as rosy as they do right now before a ball is kicked. So I'm going to go Chesterfield 4.5 to win the League Two playoffs.
Yeah, that wasn't even scripted. It was a very good answer to the question, Sam. I didn't think you'd actually have done the research, but good job, man. That was great.
Oh, I don't know how to take that. I was going to thank you, mate.
I know it would have been very well researched, but I wasn't expected to have, you had research at hand for that specific question that I didn't tell you I was going to be asking. But no, I mean, the form's crazy, isn't it? It's like one loss in 13 for Chesterfield, one win in 14 for Walsall.
You can't be backing a team with that kind of form as favourites. So I think anyone who's watched League Two, anyone who's interested in the EFL, if they look at these markets instantly, they're probably going to be thinking Chesterfield to advance at the bigger price. So I'm not saying anything outrageous here. It's for me, it's pretty obvious. I think it will be for a fair few people. So yeah, Chesterfield to edge it for me.
Yeah. Really, really like these two picks from Sam. He's gone for Chesterfield to qualify against Walsall at 1.95 with 1.25 units on that. He's also gone for Chesterfield to win the League Two playoffs altogether, 4.50. That's on Paddy Power and Betfair. 0.5 units on that in the League Two playoffs. Scott, back over to you, back up to the top 5 race in the Premier League, and you're looking at a pick for what could be a massive match in that race, Newcastle versus Chelsea.
Yeah, I think this is probably the best match of the weekend in England. Well, the top flight, the playoffs are usually better, to be honest with you, but it should be a fantastic game. And we've got a good referee in charge, something I always like to see. The card prices are not amazing, but I wouldn't put people off backing cards in this game. But I've sided with over 24.5 free kicks and over 28.5 throws in Newcastle versus Chelsea, and that's coming out 1.83 at the moment. John Brooks is at the whistle for this one. He ranks pretty highly for cards. He's given out around 5 per game. So expecting free kicks here, particularly with the teams involved. Newcastle are forcing plenty of fouls. Their matches here around 22.77 on average. So slightly below the free kick line I've got, but obviously that includes offsides. And I just think the magnitude of this fixture and the players involved, we should see plenty of kicking, basically. Bruno Guimaraes is a bit of a live wire. He likes to get involved in both being fouled and fouling. He's the most fouled player in Europe's top 5 leagues actually this season, with being fouled 99 times. And it's going to be one of those games. The Chelsea and Newcastle have already squared off twice this season, once in the League Cup. Obviously, Newcastle ended up winning that as they went on to win the trophy. There were 26 fouls in that one, 3 offsides in that game as well. And the previous league meeting, there were 29 fouls. So well above what we were asking for here. I'm at the business end of the season, so it does look very, very doable. And again, we're open for a bit of chaos. Throw-ins. Chelsea can be quite controlled, but that hasn't been the case in their clashes with Newcastle. There were 36 throw-ins in the League Cup meeting, which was at this ground, 33 in the reverse league meeting at Stamford Bridge. Newcastle matches in the Premier League seeing 34.14 throws on average, Chelsea 30.49, so a little close for comfort on the 28.5. But again, the timing of the game, the importance of the game, let's just hope it's a bit frantic in stages and we see, we don't want somebody taking a 2-goal lead really for this bet. It could still land with that happening, but the closer it is, the more that's on the line in the latter stages. I think the free kicks and the throws could fly really, so I wouldn't put anybody off going higher on the both and taking them. But in terms of the podcast and spreading this bet, we're going to try and get back to winning ways with over 24.5 free kicks and over 28.5 throws.
Yeah. Betsy certainly predicting these two teams will make the top 5. 78.7% chance of reaching the top 5 for Chelsea, 75.5% chance for Newcastle. Forest have really dropped down in those numbers in the last couple of weeks, given their form and their results. So not a surprise there. Looking specifically at this match, 1.58 expected goals for Newcastle, 1.39 expected for Chelsea. Now, looking at the state of play for both of the teams, Scott, it's kind of in the hands of both Newcastle and Chelsea, isn't it? They've got one hand on a top 5 place. You mentioned there that you really don't want to see too many goals in this game. A couple of early goals might kill this. Do you feel like that's really not going to happen? It's kind of in both teams' interest to kind of run this game down a little bit. I think a draw would probably suit both of them, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think a draw would be a good result for both. But then, with a few games remaining, if we were talking this was the last match, then I think you might actually see them actively play for the draw. But Newcastle home, they're in decent form, and I just think they're going to go for the win as well. I don't see anybody going for the juggler early on, so just think it should be a fairly even contest. Chelsea are certainly capable of going there and getting a result. I know, obviously, it'll be on the back of the Conference League, which is tonight, but they're effectively through there anyway, aren't they? And it's not somebody they've struggled with this season, because obviously they are the best team in the competition by far. So the time we're speaking, they're going to come into this one on the back of 4 straight victories. You'd think 5, because whatever team they field tonight should be able to do the job at home. But we did see there is sometimes a slip up when you have that mentality in the previous round against Legia Warsaw. So I just think Chelsea are in good form. They'll be happy with the way they played against Liverpool last week. I know Liverpool obviously already won the league, but still had to go there and go to Stamford Bridge, beat Liverpool. Newcastle, it presents a difficult test, basically, and I just think that it suits these two markets, the free kicks, the throw-ins. It should be just an evenly contested game, I'd say.
Yeah. 2 good sides in good form at the end of the season. Scott is going for over 24.5 free kicks and over 28.5 throws in Newcastle versus Chelsea in the Premier League. It's a 1.83 with a full unit on that. Daniele, back over to you for a massive match at the top of the Serie A table, Napoli versus Genoa.
That's a Sunday night, so Napoli takes the pitch after Inter would have played in Torino. A few weeks ago, we spoke about betting on under goals until the rest of the season for Napoli and Inter game. Well, this has certainly happened, and that's where I'm going for this bet. Under 2.5 goals between Napoli and Genoa, pays 175. The line actually has been set at under 2.25 goals, and that's because Napoli are projected to finish this season with only 59.4 goals scored. That would represent the lowest total than a champion of Italy has ever achieved since the league is at 20 teams. I mean, don't tell Mikel Arteta this. He would have won 5 leagues with the number of goals he scored in England. But let's leave it. They don't score many goals. The team who holds the record at the moment is Milan, 2010-2011, and they scored 65 goals in the league. Let me run you through the forward line of Milan that season. Alexandre Pato, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Robinho, then you had Clarence Seedorf, Antonio Cassano, Filippo Inzaghi was a little bit old, and Andrea Pirlo, who played only 17 games because he's injured. Now, I think the forward line of Napoli doesn't even come close to half of what I've just mentioned, but they're very effective. Napoli can get the most out of Raspadori, Lukaku, Scott McTominay, David Neres probably is coming back. So, I mean, it's not just because with comparison to what it has been. It's the way Napoli plays. Napoli is set up, and they're set up to take the sting out of games and be clinical. In the last 4 games at home, they won them all, but they've only scored 2 goals in 3 of those occasions, and the 3-0 against Empoli was fairly a little bit large. When it comes to Genoa, only 1 goal scored in the last 5 away games. They were unlucky not to get at least a point against Milan. The projected goal total here, it's quite low, and I understand it why. It's actually 187, the lowest projected total in Serie A this weekend, which, yes, is a stark contrast with the fact that Napoli are so close to win the league. So, yeah, I'm going to stay with under 2.5 goals. That's probably going to be the bet for me for Napoli until the end of the season. But, yeah, since last week results, their percentage of winning the title have increased from 73% to 75% according to Betsy. So, yeah, that's the way to go.
Yeah, it is a very low projected goal total from Betsy, isn't it? 1.87 in Napoli versus Genoa. What I want to ask you is something you touched on right at the start, which is the kickoff times with the 2 matches. Because obviously Napoli still being chased down by Inter Milan, at least for the time being, given where their focus may be in the next couple of weeks. But so Napoli kick off at 8:15 UK time on Sunday night. Inter Milan playing at 5 p.m. UK time on Sunday evening. Do you think that Torino-Inter Milan match could affect this one if Inter drop points, if Inter lose? Do you think that could affect Napoli's approach, or are they just...
They will make them slightly more relaxed, but I think they are already in a very relaxed position. 3 points ahead, 3 games to go, a much easier running than Inter. 2 home games, where Inter have got 2 away games, and they play Lazio at home. It's really Napoli to lose this one. Napoli played after Inter many times this season because of Inter involvement in the Champions League. So I think, the Inter timing dictates more. I mean, also the FA by law needs to schedule games at the same time only for the last 2 match days. But I think, obviously, for Napoli, the fact that Inter are in the Champions League final is a blessing, because I'm not expecting Inter to play the full strength squad. I expect players like Bastoni, Barella, Mkhitaryan, and Lautaro to be given minimal minutes in the league to make them recuperate. And perhaps Napoli could be champions of Italy next weekend. If Inter drops points here against Torino, they beat Genoa, then Napoli goes to Parma. Even a draw could do. Inter plays Lazio at home, a difficult game. I don't think they're going to go 100%. So I think, yes, Acerbi and Frattesi's goal on Wednesday be the best news for Napoli, who are really, really close to win the league. In Italy, it's been framed like Conte's done a miracle. I don't think it's a miracle, because they played a game a week and they got knocked out of the Coppa Italia very early. But certainly they haven't got the best squad. If you look, or the deepest squad, if you look at the expected points, Napoli should be 4th. They have overachieved in a very low tally and low goals league. But you can only beat what's in front of you, and Napoli have almost done it.
Daniele, I had Torino +1 on my shortlist against Inter. What do you reckon of that? Do you reckon there's a bit of value in that?
I think there is value on that. I don't see Inter winning by more than a goal margin here. The last large victory for Inter has been at the end of January, 4-0 against Lecce. Since then, they've all been nip and tuck games. There's going to be plenty of changes. This is the last big game for Torino of the season in front of the crowd. They don't want to get beaten. Torino don't score enough goals, but also, since Zapata has been injured, they basically haven't replaced him. So that is the issue. But they are to beat Torino. They're a tough nut to crack. I don't think Inter can walk it easily and win by 2 goals or more. So yeah, +1, I'll have it. I mean, there's a chances of a push, but yeah, I would have +1.
There's also a nightmare scenario that could happen for Inter. I say nightmare, I mean they have a chance of winning the league. But imagine Napoli do drop points, Inter, make the gap up. Yep. You get the playoff for Serie A, the Champions League final, and then Inter jet off to the Club World Cup on more like the 11th of June as well.
I've been thinking about it. If Inter and Napoli finish level on point, the playoff for the Scudetto is played no later than the 28th of May. And then the Champions League final is the 31st of May. There is no chance the playoff, the Scudetto, can be played after, because you got the World Cup qualifications, of course, and then you got the Club World Cup. So the scenario is the last game of the season gets played on Friday. Napoli and Inter play on Friday to get them potentially time to recuperate for the playoff. But then if Napoli end up losing the last game of the season and Inter makes up the ground, probably that would have been played on Sunday anyway. Yes, it is a scenario where I don't know. I think most of the Inter fans don't want the playoff for the Scudetto anyway at the moment. Having the Champions League final to play, they probably would be very happy not to play for the Scudetto playoff, which would be the Inter would play it at home, but still it would be. I think. I mean, you cannot say it's a hindrance or a distraction winning a title, but I think it's gonna change a lot of the plans.
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge if and when we come to it. Daniele's second bet is under 2.5 goals in Napoli versus Genoa. That's a 1.75 with a full unit on that. Let's do a quick recap of the bets and get out of here. Sam, give us your 3 selections on the EFL playoffs.
I've gone Charlton to qualify versus Wycombe at 1.8. That's on Sky Bet at 2 units. I've also gone Chesterfield to qualify versus Walsall at 1.95 on Bet365 for 1.25 units. And also Chesterfield to win the League Two playoffs at 4.5 on Paddy or Betfair at 0.5 units.
And Scott, your 2 from the Premier League.
Okay, I'm going to go for Bournemouth versus Aston Villa, over 23.5 shots and over 29.5 throw-ins. That's 1.86, 1 unit. And then Newcastle versus Chelsea, over 24.5 free kicks and over 28.5 throws at 1.83, also a unit. But why not? I might as well. I think I've got another winner here. So we're going to go with Wycombe versus Charlton, over 51.5 throw-ins. Based on Sam's information and the numbers. It's a playoff game. I really like the angle. Looks a little bit low. So over 51.5 throw-ins at 1.83, and we'll take a unit on that as well.
Wow, wasn't expecting that. Daniele, your 2 from Serie A, please.
So I'm going to go Juventus Asian handicap plus 0.25 against Lazio 179 and Napoli Genoa under 2.5 goals at 175, both 1 unit.
If you are going to be using any of the bets from today's show, please gamble responsibly, only bet where you can afford to lose. Thank you as ever to Sam Ingram.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Scott Thornton.
Thank you.
And thanks again, Daniele Fiscala.
Thank you. Speak soon.
Thanks for me. We'll be back next week.